Welcome to this short video on types of information storage media. The video is about information storage media, but it is linked to the Unit 2 Cambridge Technicals specification, and so we will be only looking at certain storage media in line with that specification. So we're going to be looking at paper, optical media, magnetic media and solid state media. You need to think about the characteristics of each and the purpose of them, as well as looking at their advantages and disadvantages. It would be negligent of us to say that paper is completely redundant and that CDs aren't used really anymore without really thinking into how they're used and why they're used. Okay, so where did the storage of data start is a big question. We need to think about the recording of data. What is data? Data is raw facts and figures without context. And so where did that recording start? You can go back to the ancient Egyptians, you can go back to cave writing, and so we don't really know where the storage of data started, but we know that humans, for as long as time has been, have been recording some sort of data or messages in some way on some sort of media. Where is the storage of data at today? Well, we use different things. Cloud technologies, memory sticks are still widely used. CDs are still used. We use this type of storage media to transport our data, and we're using hard disk drives and solid state drives within our machines on a regular basis, in our smartphones, in our tablets. And so it's about thinking about where it's come from, where we are currently, and possibly where we're going to go, because it might not be clear. Okay, so the origin of digital storage. Remember that we have a really short history in computer science, and the idea that computer science is old is a wrong one. Our history really does only date back to just before the Second World War, and so the first high-speed entirely electronic memory was tested in 1947 at Manchester University, which was and still is a pioneer for computer science. It used a cathode ray tube similar to an analog TV picture tube to store bits as single dots on a screen's surface, as you can see on the right hand side. Each dot lasted only a fraction of a second before fading away. So if you can imagine on old films when you've seen like radar on a submarine or on a boat, it would be similar to that. Okay, so you see it and then it fades away. The way that they recorded it was by getting a metal pickup plate to record the dots and detect an electrical change, and then actually keep that on that plate. It was quite simple, and now thinking back, it was quite rudimentary. And whilst we might look at it and go, "What was the point?" The point was that they were able to record electrical signals, and it was the start of what we needed to do in the future and what we're doing today. We mustn't forget, though, paper. And I've put here, paper, though, really. Well, yes, really. Paper has been used for centuries to store data, and it's pretty useful. I think you'd agree with that. Even now, if I want to print off something, I instantly think, have I got my printer at home? Especially working away from school, I've invested in a printer. And you'd think, well, you've got your screen, you don't need a printer. But sometimes it is so important to be able to read it in front of me and not on a screen to make annotations. You'll know that from some of your work, when your work has been typed up and you've been asked to print it, because printed material still has its place. Paper is thought to have been around since around 175 BCE. That's around 2,195 years ago. So you know the process of making paper. You know it comes from trees. And at that time, they were filing off very thin shards of the tree to be able to record messages on. That's rather monumental for its time. Okay, and if we think about the use of maps to navigate the globe, if we think about the use of paper to send messages, paper has been really at the forefront and the most widely used form of data storage that has ever been used on this planet. Okay, and I would imagine that it continues to do so for a long time yet. It really does have its place. Paper is still widely used today in notes. You make notes in lessons on paper, maps, books, transcripts, letters, flyers, posters, billboards. The list goes on and on. Companies still want to know about flyer production. The printing industry is still at the height of its game. All right, it's not as used as much as it once was because you have other means, you have social media and things like that, but it is still useful. If you drop a letter through 100 doors, you maybe have 100 customers. If you stick that same letter on social media, you might reach 1 million customers, but of those 1 million customers, they all have to be on social media. Whereas with paper, you don't have to have any connection to anything. You just have to be able to be given that piece of paper in order to be able to read it. Optical storage media then is any storage method that uses a laser to store and retrieve data from optical media. It uses low power laser beams to record and retrieve digital data. Compact disc and DVDs are examples of optical data, and I'm just giving you a brief timeline there, okay? Optical storage was first used in 1984, and CDs first came into use in that year, so they were the first optical storage. This was followed by a magneto-optical disc in 1992. They never really took off because of their expense, mainly. This was followed by DVD in 1995, although many of you wouldn't have even been getting DVD players at that time because it wasn't widely used. Followed by CD rewritables, the ability to take what's on a CD and overwrite it in 1997. And Blu-ray didn't come around until 2003. Okay, now to think about that, that is only 17, 18 years ago Blu-ray came about. And whilst that is your entire lifetime, if you're in my year 12 or year 13 IT class, it isn't that long ago. And so we are still in this dawn of technology storage of data, and we are forever developing. There are two other forms of media storage. There's magnetic media storage, and examples of that are tapes and hard disk drives, and there's solid state storage such as SSDs and flash memory. You are going to have to go away and do what I've done for paper and optical there to get a little bit of history and data on magnetic and solid state storage and a bit of an understanding of where it's come from, why it was developed, what it looks like and what it does. So that's going to be one of your tasks to do after this video. Another one of your tasks to do after this video is to create a table that has the column headings of each storage method listed here: paper, optical, magnetic and solid state. Below the headings outline the usage, where they're used in society and where they're used within a computer or within what type of device, a portable device or a fixed device, a description of their core characteristics, answering the questions such as how do they work, what do they look like, how have they evolved over time, have they got smaller, have they got bigger, have they got smaller in size but bigger in storage capacity. That's what I want you to be answering in there. The cost of them, and I want a cost rundown over time. You can pick up a 5 terabyte hard disk drive for 60 quid currently from Curry's PC World. If you look it up and you start looking at how much a terabyte worth hard drive was for sale for about 20 years ago, you'd be looking into the hundreds. So the price has come down for those types, but the price of solid state storage has continued to rise. Why is that? I want you to think about that. Advantages and disadvantages. The fact that hard disk drives have moving parts and solid state drives don't. Advantages and disadvantages of each. CDs can be scratched, can be damaged, can be stolen easily, can be snapped. Paper, it's open to all of the elements. It gets wet, it's ruined. It gets set on fire, it's ruined. The wind blows, you might lose it. So those are the advantages, disadvantages of each, and I want you to list them there. And then your third task is working to a scenario. I want you to think about the exam, okay? And the exam always throws in scenarios, and this Unit 2 exam will have a big scenario that we will study, where a lot of the exam questions will be centered around it. But I've written this scenario for you here. So, Peter is a freelance builder for Progress Builders. Obviously, everything's progress. He has worked hard to build a reputation in the local area and is now ready to open an office and employ another builder. In his words, he's branching out. Peter is a self-proclaimed novice when it comes to IT and is happy to go to the local electronics outlet and purchase whatever is on offer. Suggest a storage methods to Peter for the following eventualities that he is likely to face. Providing a quote and sketches to a potential client. So he's met with the client and he's looked at the job and he now needs to provide them with a quote and the sketches of what the quote's for, and he needs to get them to them. What would you suggest in terms of a storage method for those? Storing client records, inventory and wages. So he now needs to have a database of some sort to store all of his clients' details. He needs to have an inventory of stock and materials, and he needs to now manage wages of somebody else other than himself. What storage method would you recommend for him to use to do that, and what would that look like? And then submitting plans to the local planning department. So whenever somebody has an extension or a building added to their property, they may need to submit plans for planning permission to the local planning department. Maybe a bit of research there on your part, but how could he go about doing that? For each, you need to make a suggestion and explain it using your table from the previous task. So I want to see you bringing in the characteristics, the advantages, the disadvantages, and why you have recommended what you have. A little bit of support for you is that I would see this as 3 individual 6-mark questions. And if you structure it as 3 individual 6-mark questions, you won't scrimp on one of them over another. Thank you very much for listening.